Hi guys, today's topic is something that a lot of y'all have reached out to us and asked us about immigration. And rightly so, because not only is this process really overwhelming and complicated, it's also constantly changing. Especially in light of the COVID-19 situation, some changes may be expected in the future. But what I do want you to take home from this video is just a general overview of how things process once you get an acceptance from a dental school, be it preceptorship, DDS, masters, or any other related field. I just want you to know what happens, how you apply for your visa, and then how you get work authorization after. There is so much information that we've decided to break it down into two videos. So for now, let's start. Take a look.
There is a lot of information about the different kinds of visas, F1, J1, H1B, OPT, and so many terminologies, and it can get really overwhelming. So in this presentation specifically, I just want to discuss what the F1 is and what OPT is. So to be issued an F1, the first thing is that the school that you apply to or the school that accepts you needs to be a part of SEVP, which is Student and Exchanger Visitor Program, and it needs to be certified by the SEVP to be able to accept and teach and issue a degree or a certificate to international students. Now on the corner I do have resources. Feel free to pause the video at any time and check out those sources. The list of SEVP certified schools, which has a very comprehensive list starting from high schools that accept international students all the way to universities and even PhD programs. So to be able to start applying for your F1 visa, the first step would be acceptance in a school. It could be in any program. We're talking about all programs including preceptorship, masters, DDS, PhD, any of that. Once you're accepted in that school, the next thing your school will do is issue an I-20. Now, if you're already enrolled in a different course, before you get into your DDS or PhD, then you just have to apply for an I-20 transfer. Again, that is done by your school. So once that is, obviously you'll still have to do all the coordinating, but your school will be responsible to issue an I-20 for you. Now, once you have that, and you also have your fees paid off, you do owe some fees to SEVP. You also owe fees for the student visa itself. So once you have all that, you can get started with your DS 160, which is the application form for your F1 visa. And finally, after that, you can set up an appointment at any of the US embassies for an interview. There is a lot to talk about the intricate steps in each of these in the whole process, and also about what to expect in the interview. But I just want to give you a general overview. If you are interested in more details, you can refer to the link that I've posted on the corner of the video, and that does discuss a lot about what to expect in your F1 visa interview and process. So we've got a lot of questions about what we can or what we cannot do while we're here studying either DDS or masters or preceptorship or any of that. So the first question is, can we hold a job? Can we work? So here's the restriction, that you can work but only on campus. Now keep in mind, not all schools have on-campus jobs for international students. Some schools do. And even with that, your restriction is that you have to be less than 20 hours a week, which is what is called part-time. Because you're expected to be a full-time student and only work part-time to support yourself. On breaks, like summer breaks, vacations, you can then work for less than about 40 hours. The kind of work that you'd usually do on campus would be food service, library, clerical work, just like hosting school events and similar kind of jobs. The next 2 points are more before you get into school, is when you're applying for your F1 visa, you will have to prove that you do have strong ties abroad, that you don't plan to abandon, that you don't plan to give up. It could be anything. It could be house, property, business, family, any of that is tying you back to your home country, so that it doesn't look that like your F1 application is an intent to immigrate. You also need to show that you do have financial support to complete your education, which means it's not just the initial costs that you have to show. You do have to show that you have enough to be able to finish the whole course that you're coming in for. You can show loans, you can show bank statements from your parents, your property, relatives who want to support you, co-signers in the US. There are a ton of documents that you can look into to be able to show that you do have the financial support that you need to live in the US, as well as finish the education that you're coming in here for. Finally, the other thing is you can have a dependent come with you on an F2 visa, but they cannot work. So you'll still have to prove financially that you're able to manage yourself as well as the dependent, because the dependent is not going to be able to work. A side note about the F2 visa is that a dependent would be either a parent, a child under 21 who is single, as well as a spouse. So the F2 visa is again done by your school. When you submit your paperwork, you will have to declare that you have a dependent, and they'll include that. So then with that documentation in the I-20, you will be able to apply for an F2 visa for your dependent. And then your F1 visa duration is for 5 years. So when you come in with the intention of doing a couple courses before you do your DDS, or doing residency after doing your DDS, you just kind of need to keep in mind that you need to finish whatever education you choose to do within 5 years, or you have to go back and reapply, re-interview, and get another new student visa after, if your 5 years are up. So you also need to be enrolled in a course and just do the same process that we spoke about again after 5 years if your education is not complete. All right, optional practical training, which is a temporary work permit, and it is only for a limited duration. So to qualify for OPT, you need to be enrolled as a full-time student for at least 3 quarters, that is about 9 months to a full year, in an academic program on an F1 status, which finally culminates in a degree or a certification. So the few keywords here are full-time student. You need to be on an F1 visa status for getting an OPT. So your F1 visa status needs to be still valid. And finally, you cannot drop out of a course or not be in a course and try to apply for your OPT. You do need to finish it. You do need to have your degree or your certificate, and only then can you apply for your OPT. So a designated student officer, is a DSO is what we call them. They will recommend and endorse your OPT if you meet all those requirements that we just spoke about. So when can you apply, right? You can apply up to 90 days before and 60 days after you finish your course. So let's say you're finishing in June, you have 3 months before June to apply, or 2 months after June. In that duration of 5 months, you need to talk to your DSO, tell them that you intend to work after this, and they will verify and make sure you meet all requirements, and then they will submit your application, which is form I-765, to USCIS to be able to process your OPT. Again, there is an application fee for this, so you also need to make sure you have financial arrangements for that. It's probably about $400 as of today. Usually it does take 90 days for your OPT to be processed and for you to get that work permit to start. So it would be a good idea to apply as soon as you qualify. That is, as soon as it's just 90 days before graduation, go ahead and apply for your OPT. Right. I did speak about something called the work permit. The card that I'm showing you is a sample card, which is called an EAD. It is an employment authorization card. This card is what you need to wait for before you can actually start working. So while you're on an OPT, this card is what you're going to show as your proof to work. This is called an EAD card. So one of the main things is that once you apply for your OPT and it takes those 90 days to get processed, sometimes even more, sometimes less, you need to wait for this card to come in your mail, to be in your hand before you can actually start working. And then the work that you take has to be very directly related to your field of study. So either if you're doing DDS, you can work as a dentist, or anything in the dental field. If you're doing any of the other courses like research or preceptorship, masters, it all has to be related to the field that you're graduating in or getting a certificate in. Your options could be dental assistant, research assistant, or lab tech, if you plan to do any of the certificate courses. So there are a few precautions and limitations that exist with your EAD and your OPT status. First of all is that every time you plan to travel internationally, you need to have a travel signature on your I-20. So I-20 is a document that you will be given that defines your whole, the reason that you got your F1. So every time you have to travel internationally, you have to carry that document with a signature from your DSO. We spoke about DSO as designated student officer, who will sign and give you that permission to leave the country and come back. You also, in addition to that, there are a lot of other documents you need to carry, and again, all of that information is on the USCIS website, and we will also talk about it more in our workshops and our one-on-one sessions to guide you through every detail in this whole process. The duration now. The duration for OPT is, for most dental related courses, especially the clinical courses, is 1 year. So while you're working on your OPT and you only have that validity for 1 year, you also need to have a valid F1 status. If you're, at least when you're applying for it, if your F1 status dies out in between, then you cannot travel internationally, because then you won't have a valid visa status to come back on. So you just need to remember that the visa status that you are still on while you're on your OPT is still your F1, because you're still connected to that educated field that you just graduated from. Now, there are a lot of people who are interested in doing masters in clinical sciences, oral biology, health administration, public health. Some of these courses fall under the STEM category, which is science, technology, education, and math. Funnily enough, dentistry doesn't fall under this, at least as of today. So if you do qualify for the STEM, under the STEM category, you then have a 17-month extension. So if you are, once you are enrolled in that course, you can look up whether your course is a part of STEM or not. And once you know that you are, then it's good news, because that gives you 3 years, almost 3 years to work on your OPT, as compared to just the 1 year that you get if you did like a preceptorship or any other certificate program, or even DDS for that matter, would just give you 1 year.
As much as I hate leaving things off on a cliffhanger, you've already had a lot of information for today with just F1 and OPT. So in our subsequent videos, we will discuss H1B, the lottery, and everything that you have to do after your OPT ends. If you have any questions at all, feel free to send us a DM on Instagram or send us an email. You have our information up here on the video. And thank you so much for watching. See you soon.